good morning and welcome to the second day of PGM International Symposium. So here today we have a distinguished guest together with us again. We have like the big boss of composers here. Just a student to learn, so by the way. But and today's session is going to be hosted by Dr. Jean-David Cayoulet, dear friends and colleagues of mine from PGIM. So I hand it to you now, Dr. Jean-David.
Okay, thank you very much, Anotai. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for day 2 of this international festival. Today, the focus shifts partly to the traditions and innovations that can be witnessed around Southeast Asia. This is certainly true for this breakfast roundtable that you are about to attend today, where we have invited 5 very talented and influential artists who will share with us some of their philosophies and approaches to music composition. We will be looking more specifically at how they adopt some aspects of traditional expressions into their own artistic practice. So I'm really delighted to be here today. I think it's going to be a really exciting time. The concept is simple. We will basically go around each composer, and maybe I should show you who we have present. So we will have Anotai Nitibon, Dr. Anotai Nitibon from Thailand, Dr. Chong Ki-yong from Malaysia, Dr. Ho Shung-shi from Singapore, Dr. Alex Dea from Indonesia, and the tall man behind me here, Dr. Jonas Bess in the Philippines. So basically, we'll go around Southeast Asia, starting in the islands with Alex Dea, and then we'll move to Manila with Jonas Bess, down to Singapore with Ho Shung-shi, and then Malaysia with Ki-yong, and finally we'll be back in the home of this symposium with Anotai Nitibon. So let's get started. So each composer will discuss one piece or a set of selected pieces for about 15 to 20 minutes each, and then we'll have a group discussion reflecting on each other's ideas and philosophies. And then we'll open the virtual floor for a round of questions and possibly answers. So let me introduce the first composer today, Dr. Alex Dea. Alex was born in America. He is an ethnomusicologist and researcher who has received his PhD in ethnomusicology from Wesleyan University in the US. There, he specialized in Javanese gamelan music. He also studied composition with the avant-garde minimalists such as Lamonte Young, Terry Riley, and Robert Ashley. From 1971 to 1975, he studied voice culture with a master Hindustani singer, Pandit Pran Nath. He was a member of Lamonte Young's Theatre of Eternal Music, and was the first tuning assistant for his masterpiece, The Well-Tuned Piano. Since 1992, he has been dedicated to ethnography and research, living in Surakarta and Yogyakarta in Java, Indonesia. There he has studied with many of the last remaining masters of music, dance, and theater. His archive contains thousands of hours of video, and I really enjoyed that wonderful piece you opened our symposium with, Alex, yesterday. That was really wonderful. And at the moment, he still performs and composes with both traditional and avant-garde approaches, creating intercultural musical works. But today he will discuss, among other things, his piece Gangsaran Sapto, which involves 60 players of different ages using every note of 4 gamelan sets to create a wonderful horizontal poly-microtonal sound. So welcome, Alex. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
Very well.
Okay,
We can
thank
hear
you.
you and we can see you.
Okay. Well, I'm happy because for some reason I cannot get in. Okay, should I get started?
Yes, sure.
Okay, first of all, thank you all for helping me to join all of you. I've met most of you before. The only person I'm not really sure is Jonas. Maybe we've met in Philippines because I used to go there and meet up with Ramon. So anyway, if I forget, please excuse
We
me.
were just talking about this with Jonas earlier.
Yeah.
I saw pictures of you with Ramon Santos in UP.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I have not had a chance to go down to UP recently, so I really missed there. But hopefully, after this pandemic, we'll be able to visit with each other again.
Mhm.
Okay, for me, get started. If you don't mind, I am going to show two examples. Okay, so we'll just use your PowerPoint, or should I use mine with a share screen?
It's really up to you, Alex. You can choose.
Let me do it share screen because then I can use my cursor to point it out points, and also to change the slides. It would be easier for me to do it. Is that okay?
Of course, it's totally
Okay.
fine.
Okay, here we go. Let's see, where is it? Okay, can you see my slide now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then let me just jump in. So Gangsaran Sapto, as you've mentioned already, is a poly-microtonal sound, which presents the unique sonorities and vibrations. Let's see if I can get this to go. Oh, there we go. And so in my piece, I use the Javanese gamelan, the traditional one, and I don't add any unusual or Western or other instruments outside of the Javanese gamelan itself. So it's so-called, I can say, pure. It's based on my piece on a simple Javanese composition, which has 8 beats before the gong. So you may know that every Javanese gamelan composition always has a gong at the end of the well, what should we call it? It's the main melody. It's hard to say it's a melody or not, but every composition has different forms having to do with the length of how many gongs. So, for instance, if we go for a wedding, probably it would be a 16 beat, maybe a 32 beat, like that. And then if we have very, very classical music, it would be much bigger. So this, what I chose, is based on a Javanese gamelan known as Gangsaran itself. It's an 8-beat melody, and it's just one note repeatedly. And so it's a kind of used on battle fights in the shadow play or in the operatic wayang opera, wayang orang, and things like that. So why I called it Sapto is because this is the name of the founder of the Jogja Gamelan Festival that went on for many years, and starting around year 2000 or 1999, I started playing with them every year. But then he passed away a few years ago, and so to honor him, I created this Gangsaran Sapto, which, as we say, is poly-microtonal and has many non-harmonic overtones mixed together. And the reason is because Sapto loves gamelan, but he's also a kind of a crazy electronic composer. So he used to sample gamelan and do crazy things with it. So I wanted to honor him by doing something a little bit crazy. Okay. So what I do in my piece is I add notes one by one. So each player is given a large card to tell them when to start playing. And we just keep going and build up until all the notes are playing at the same time. there's no score other than the fact that I give them these things represent the like tickets or chits that I give to each performer. So for instance, if you join me, I might give you this one, the instrument known as the mung, and you would play in the scale of pelog and you would get note number 1. So when I show this card, then you start playing. And other people don't play until they get theirs. So let's say, for instance, if somebody else has this one, and so that when this note comes in, then they play. Okay, so I just wanted to show you, so-called the score looks like that. Okay, so I say that this composition is not melody based, even though a 1-note 8-beat composition is in fact the melody. But I just mean from the point of view of us outside of the Javanese space, that it's more of this horizontal, or not horizontal in terms of melody, but horizontal in terms of a sound that keeps going. So it's like a drone. So I think of it more of as a vertical sense of creating a cloud of sound. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what I call the out of normal Western tuning. So a lot of you know that the Javanese classical gamelan has 2 scales. In fact, 2 sets of instruments in every orchestra. The one is called the pelog, which has 7 notes, and it has semitones in the scale. And then the other one is called slendro. It's 5 notes and without semitones. So these give you 12 notes. And there is no common tone between pelog and slendro, except in some of the more modern instruments. They do have at least 1 common note. But traditionally, it's possible for all 12 to be separate notes. And so what I want to just talk a little bit of about the space. Maybe I'll play the composition. Well, maybe it's a good time to play the composition now. Yeah, JD, do we have the Gangsaran Sapto? I cannot hear JD because I'm sharing the screen.
No. I forgot to switch back my microphone.
Okay.
Let's play the composition. Okay, so I'll play Gangsaran. Here we go. Maybe you'll need to switch.
Oh, I should stop sharing, right?
So we can go full screen, yes.
Okay. Yeah, one thing is if you had headphones or good speakers, it's better if you use that because the sound is very big, but my video was a performance and I was some distant away from the gamelan. So if you can hear more clearly with the headphones and speakers, I think you will see the idea what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, thank you, Alex, and I'll play the video now.
Okay. Okay, that was
Wow,
yeah, that
this
was
must have been loud.
it was wonderful because in the real life space you can hear all the overtones and the mixing of the overtones, and since the overtones are also non non-harmonic, or I guess the word is a non-enharmonic, there's many added what they call sum and difference overtones. So the thing is, the piece itself goes for about 20 minutes. And you might have heard that there's some other parts in there. And so a few of the instruments are given other than one note, but the main thing is the one note. Okay, can I go back to share my screen?
Sure,
Okay,
go
here we
ahead.
go. Yeah, let's see, here we are. Okay, so here's the main thing that I like is that I got the microtonality for free. The free is what I mean is that there's no need for me to make notations of, very tiny plus and minus, or even double plus or double minus to have the performer create microtones. So I love the idea that I could get this sonic environment, the sound image, basically for free, so to speak. Okay, so here's the thing, I'm always looking for easier ways to produce what some people call difficult music. So I was looking at the scores of some of the great 20th century pioneers, and I noticed that some scores are very difficult to perform, as you guys know, because you're more into the orchestral space than I am. But I noticed that, God, why are they playing, such strange time signatures, and they're putting plus and minus and all kind of things. It makes it very difficult for the performer. And so it occurred to me that in some, but not all cases, the composer was actually trying to create a sound image of free time or free sound. They wanted new, unexpected sounds. So my approach is to find a way to create uncommon sound images, but with much less work. Now, I can think of it that way is that I'm lazy, because most of my compositions are very open-ended. So I allow the performers some, or in some cases, a lot of freedom as to how they interpret the actual playing. So I always give them the sound image, I give them the frame, I give them the aesthetic, and then in some cases there might be some scoring, but not always. So what I like to do, aside from that, is I bring elements from different cultures, and each has unique qualities of sonorities, tone color, time and rhythm, and sense of movement. So for instance, the movement may be done by having no motion at all. And an example, classical Indian tambura is a drone instrument. Now it's usually used as the background for singing or sitar or something like that. But the tambura instrument itself has very rich overtones based on only two notes that they play. And so another example is the New York minimalists like Steve Reich or Philip Glass, or my teachers Lamont Young and Terry Riley. So there is another example of how we have so-called movement with so-called no motion. So we know, of course, there is motion, but what I mean is there's an aesthetic sense of repetition, and then somehow creating the cloud of sound image to develop. Okay, another aspect of my compositional approach is I'm very interested in tuning and overtones. So in Gangsaran, I use and get the benefit of the overtones of non-tempered scales of the Javanese gamelan. So the thing is, I like to work so-called new or avant-garde and so-called old or classical, and especially non-Western musical systems and approach. So ethnomusicology, the main reason I think I became an ethnomusicologist was to study the different musics of the world. I probably would not have gone into ethnomusicologist if, as a composer in 1960, maybe 69, I was already interested in how to compose using the sounds from other cultures. So I'm thinking, of people like Alan Hovhaness, just as an example, where he had some study with Asian cultures, and then he put that into his composition. And so I was really interested in the musical systems of each culture. So because of that, I was studying Indian music, and that was with Terry Riley and with his guru, Pandit Pranat. And then I heard of gamelan, and so I fell in love with the sound of the gamelan. And so one thing led to another, and pretty soon I was at Wesleyan University getting a PhD in ethnomusicology. So back to Gangsaran as a composition, it is minimalist. You can see that there's one note. The framework is classical because of the 8 notes, and the drummer plays according to the classical drumming, and the orchestra plays according to the form of the every 8 beats, and then there's some other details. But the result is what I call avant-garde, just for the lack of any other word, because what I've done is not considered to be normal sound. To a Javanese gamelan listener, it would be really not normal. Some maybe won't even like it, which again is a sign of avant-garde, because one of the early writers, Castellanets, said one sign of avant-garde is that people don't like your music. Okay, so think about that. Okay, so I just want to say that I do not always create sounds, like that. I also do have more, let's call it conventional compositions. And so I have one called Kootenai Reflections, which is a solo guitar. It sounds more or less normal. It is fully notated. It's done in open tuning. And here's where I go a little bit into the non-Western, is that I was thinking about, the Middle Eastern sound of their guitar, like the oud or the tar, and you find those instruments in, all over, like in Egypt and Arabia and Persia and things like that. And so this is just a score to show that I do have notation. You don't have to look into it, but I just want to show you that from the point of view of the performer, they have much less freedom. But even there is some freedom. The scale that I used for this composition was called the Indian Raga Asavari, which turns out to be nothing more than the Western a melodic minor. But in this whole section at the beginning here, you notice there's no time signature. And that's because I was showing free rhythm of the Indian, what they call the alap or alapan, which is the prologue to the regular composition. And in North Indian music, this alap can go for quite a long time. It can be a few minutes, it can be 10 minutes. And so what I'm trying to do here is give the Western guitarists who may not have ever listened to Indian music how they can play and achieve the same freedom of the Indian way of playing. Now, later on, I do end up with some time signatures. You can see 7/8, 8/8, There's some other ones with 5/8 and 10/8. And these meters are, of course, Indian style, that what I was inspired by. Okay, the other thing is, on this composition, I become a little bit naughty, because here we have all these unusual time signatures, but then at the end section, at about, I guess at about 10 minutes into it, I put into Javanese concept of irama, which is a time and a rhythm concept, which deals with the levels of space and time expansion. So, and for that part, for the Javanese, I base it on a very traditional gamelan composition called pangkor, which has 8 beats times 4 lines. So that's 32 beat gongs. Okay, so I think the Kutani reflections will be played at some point in this symposium, but I don't know the exact time or date. So I'm not even sure it's really played, but I was told that, you know, they're trying to do it.
It will be on Friday evening, Bangkok time, 7 p.m.
Oh,
Friday, 27th.
okay, okay, wonderful. I'm very pleased, because I really like this piece, and I've been playing with one of the teachers at this school, with Kok Apichai, and he's been working on it, and I'm going to be very pleased to hear it in real performance. Okay, so that's what I have to say, and there might be other questions or whatever. We can talk more about what I have done.
Thank you very much, Alex. That was such a wonderful first presentation. It's particularly interesting to see how you combine different systems from one culture to another, or even within the same group of related cultures. Your 5 notes plus 7 notes, 12 note scale, gamelan scale, is quite unique. I've never seen this being done before. So very much looking forward to asking you more questions about tuning as well later on. So thank you very much. Let's move to our next guest today, Dr. Jonas Baez. Jonas Baez is a Filipino composer of interdisciplinary works and a very active musicologist. Jonas has studied composition with Dr. Ramon Pagayon Santos at the University of the Philippines in Quezon City, Manila, in the late 70s, where he earned a B.Mus in composition. He also studied musicology with Jose Maceda in the early 80s, and later on studied composition and musical politics with Matthias Spallinger in Germany in the early 90s. He then completed his PhD at the University at UP in the Philippines in 2004, with a dissertation entitled Modes of Appropriation in Philippine Indigenous Music, the Politics of the Production of Cultural Difference. Right now, and since quite a while, Dr. Baez has taught analysis and composition at UP and lectures internationally when he's able to travel, of course. But this morning, Jonas Baez discusses a musical composition which is part of a series of 5 separate environmental soundscapes entitled Daloy. In Daloy 2, Jonas involves 5 interlocking flat gongs played in patterns that invoke the Kalinga music of the northern Philippines. So good morning, Jonas.
Good morning. I hope I'm heard very well. Am I heard very well?
You heard very well, yes.
Yeah. I'm scared with a picture there. That's a scary picture. My daughter said that.
It is a scary picture. I like it very much.
My daughter said it's a scary picture of me. Anyway, maybe it reminds her when I'm angry. And so.
You found a shirt that's exactly the same color as your blackboard, green board. That's quite impressive.
But my children. My College of Music children cleaned that already, AJ and Felice. Anyway, before I start, I'd like to greet some friends here. Max Reefer, I don't know what time it is in Germany, but hello very much. Juro Kim, hello. It's good you came over, and I don't know if my baby Feliz Ann is somewhere. So greetings to everybody I know. Today I'll be talking about Daloy and a particular movement of that work, Daloy. But before that, I'd like to give a little background to that. The work is called Daloy. It's spelled Daluy. It stands for flow, but in Filipino, Daloy is spelled as Daloy. It's pronounced Daloy, which means really flow, the flow of conversation, the flow of water, etc. But I used you here so that it invokes a certain kind of music I love, which was recorded by Maceda in 1977. It's called the Telui of the Kaliman of the Modang, I think, of Kalimantan. Very beautiful leader chorus singing, and it was for that reason also that the whole Daloy set, the five movements, ends in the audience being engaged by a group of singers in leader chorus singing. Um, it's just that I couldn't discuss the whole of Daloy today, so I'll settle for just the second movement, which actually covers so much ground with regards to the very theme of this conference. Um, First and foremost, before I talk about this piece, there's a certain background to my work as a composer and how I am induced into composing something like Daloy. Actually, it all begins in 1978 because there were two very important events in my life in 1978. I was barely a first-year student at the University of the Philippines. My I entered in 77, about the middle of 77, but I haven't. It hasn't been a year. It was martial law in the Philippines, so we were living in fear. My brother has just come out of prison, and we were getting him out of the country so that at least he's safe. Um, and in 1978, a tribal leader from the Kalinga tribe of northern Philippines and his family were massacred. I think other members of his community were massacred in northern Philippines by elements of the military under the Marcos dictatorship. This man, his name is Makliing Dulag, is a tribal leader who was uh, in a movement opposed to the building of dams in their place of in their living space, because these dams are going to transgress their ancestral domain. And his argument was that our ancestors are buried there. That is our land. But because he was opposed to this, one night he was killed, and that really had a very strong mark in me because I was in the underground movement at the time. I was a protest musician, and I always thought as the indigenous peoples, not only for their culture, not only for their uniqueness, not only for what I would get from them in terms of sound, in terms of scale, in terms of rhythm, but because they were actually marginalized peoples whose struggles should be incorporated with the general struggle of our own country, the national body politic of the Philippines. And that was always my thinking with regards to indigenous peoples. So with that, at the same time, at the same year, Jose Maceda, who was to make a very strong impact to me years later, uh, premiered his work Ading, which actually is a Kalinga chant. It just so happens that it's a Kalinga chant. And this is a fantastic work because he has the audience taking part. He has 100 bamboo instrumentalists deployed in a space. He has 100 singers, etc., etc. Actually, when I heard Ading that very night, I said, that's what I was going to do, nothing else. I'm trying to achieve that, and that's the thing I want to do. So with regards to Daloy, which actually has already been a product of many of my experiences with Maceda and my research in Mindoro, etc., I found myself in 1994 in Freiburg, studying with, uh, at first I was reluctant to, but studying with the great Matthias Spalinger. Actually, it was kind of a problematized kind of study because I came there in 1992, um, trying to figure out what I was doing there. I knew I had to do this studying in Germany, but I had already been doing research and I was already doing stuff and I was doing stuff with Maceda. I was very close to him, etc., etc. But I was in Freiburg and I was studying with this German guy. So the thing that came to my mind is that I was going to study in Freiburg so that I will know what I will not do, so that I will know what I do not want to be. At least it will actually make me understand even more what I want to be and what I want to do. And I said that to, I think I said that to Spallinger. I don't know if he remembers that, but I went on with my study. So that was in 1992, 93, and in 1994, I had the final work I had to do under him, which I would call Dalui. Actually, Dalui, actually, Dalui is one work where I addressed several notions, critical notions. I have said about my critical stance regarding indigenous peoples, my critical stance regarding my country, my critical stance regarding human rights, etc., etc. And in the course of studying with Spallinger and with his guidance, I come to the level of having questions about ontology. Ontology, read meaning, what is a work? What is its being? That was what I was thinking at first. If I were to compose something, I wasn't impressed with just composing this or that with microtone, with scale. I wasn't impressed with that. I wanted to go deep into it because I wanted to make an impact on the very society I come from. And in fact, from that, somehow maybe make an impact on other societies. So that was the first in my mind with Spallinger's guidance and all the readings he's giving me, the ontology. The notion of ontology or the question of what is a work draws out another question, trajectory. For whom will this work be? And by whom will this work be rendered? That was something that was in my mind. So from 1993, that was running in my head. Now in 1994, my daughter was born, Patricia was born in January, which was, well, my daughter means the world to me up to now. And this wonderful thing. And I remember singing lullabies to her, Irayamangan lullabies, to my daughter. And that sparks this notion of, I'm going to do something which ends in a lullaby. And so that was what was to be Dalui. But there was one thing that was important to me in this work. I wanted to compose Dalui for Kalinga musicians. Kalinga musicians who have their tradition, Kalinga musicians who in their cultural and social experience are actually politicized in the sense that they know their way of life. They know the threats to their way of life. And I have been engaged with such musicians even in the 90s before I left for Germany, in the 80s. Because they had such an experience in their life, marginality, militarization, their land being taken from them, big, gigantic firms encroaching into their land. And they, coming from a warrior culture, has this notion of defending their land. So I wanted to compose this for Kalinga musicians, but they addressing a mainstream culture in a way of conscientizing this mainstream culture and letting them know what the situation is, where they are now. This is what we are. This is where we are. And in fact, Schwalinger was asking me, who will do this? I mean, and you can only do this in the Philippines. No, if I do this in Europe to an audience, let's say in Germany, etc., I can conscientize that. I can ask questions like, why, for instance, I was in Germany that time. Why, for instance, is Germany very clean? And I remember him smiling with that question. because at that time the issue came out that Germany was that Germany was bringing their garbage outside country, things like those, or why is Europe very clean, or etc. etc. And I was into that thing. I said, I mean, it can actually open up people into being aware of what is happening in the world in a deeper sense. So that was what Daloy was all about. Now the five movements of Daloy actually are like this my exercise in Bildung. In fact, this notion of Bildung, this notion of building up. The five movements are actually, if you look at them, they are like progressions that go from the performers and into the audience, touching them. The first movement uh, it's an exercise. It's a meditative exercise for percussion. The second movement, which we will hear, are for um, interlocking instruments where they are meant to go around the audience and insinuating them. The third movement calls out words with regards to with social meanings. The fourth movement is we engage the audience by giving them small instruments like small bamboo flutes, about 100 of them, or in many cases I give away these little chimes made of nails, which I invented. That's another story, or stones, or whatever is available in the locality, or whatever I can make. And then the fifth movement, there are singers who engage the audience in leader chorus singing there. I can talk about the whole thing, but it'll take more than an hour. But I'll just deal with the second movement because it actually harks on a very important issue with regards to transformation. Now, this is the score sort of Daloy. Actually, the idea of creating a score, and Spalinger knows this, is that I want to write it down only as instructions and we can just forget about it. It's like a jazz lead sheet in a way. You have a set of chord changes, and then, but in a way, we don't have chord changes here, but you have patterns. And because these are for, I can't see the score, JD. JD, can you show the score? Anyway, if you look at the score, if you could see it, the patterns there. Hello, JD. Is the score on the screen? I'd just like to show it. I can't hear you, man. There. Thank you. Anyway, if you look at the score, it was originally thought of for 5 bamboo instruments, and then using the interlocking pattern, I created an interlocking pattern which apparently can be reproduced by 5 instrumentalists. The interlocking notion in Kalinga is that you have a pattern, and then you have a first person will play this pattern, and the second one will copy it, and the third will copy it, and the fourth will copy it in this manner, in a sort of a diagonal thinking. And then that is it. And it has a resultant melody, which I will go back to that notion very shortly. But in Daloy's score, I use that notion, that Kalinga traditional notion, but I at some point that structure will break down, it will dissolve, and then after dissolving, another person from the group will start, and other patterns will come out, and again, once they've reached a certain regularity, they will break down again, and until maybe most of them have or all of them have had the chance to be the person who begins the pattern. So about 5 times, 5 repetitions. The idea of dissolution actually is my way of criticizing the notion of dissolution with regards to cultural production, the domination of certain institutions like the state with regards to cultural production, and the marginalization of what the so-called culture betters. And so that was what was in my mind there. But what was very important here, which apparently is very difficult to achieve if you are not in the tradition, is the concept called the suklit. Suklit, it's a word that I think I've heard this first with the late Ben Pangusban, who was teaching Kalinga music in the university when I was a student, and later with Benicio Socong. It has to do with achieving this resultant melody from playing. So you have to play correctly the patterns to achieve this resultant melody. So the idea of interlocking is not really rhythmic in that sense, if you'd like to use that category. But it's actually, if you like to use that category, melodic, or in my sense, suklit. In their sense, suklit. It's achieving that suklit that actually tells us that the players are very good. Now you can hear that in the background a bit. They're playing on bamboo instruments. It creates this. If they play it right, the pattern right, it comes out. That was very important. That was a very important aspect of performance. This ethno theory, so to say, of suklit, of veering away from my own categorizations of scale, rhythm, etc., etc., and going into, in a deeper sense, what they are, how they think, trying to go into that, trying to engage them. I was so lucky that Benicio Socong was able to perform this with us with a small group in Wellington sometime in the early 2000s, I think, and that he was able to uh, to do a very good performance in that sense. And he, before that, he performed this also with this group here in Manila in a conference on bamboo. And apparently, I was so lucky that musicians like those. Um, that's why it was so difficult to have Dalui performed up until I met. I mean, I saw this group in the University of the Philippines, who was organized by a very close colleague of mine, the Dean Vern de la Peña, when he was chairman of the Department of Musicology. This group called Tugma, Tugtugang Musika Asiatica, who actually immersed into traditions to learn them very well. I think Anothai and PGVIM might be familiar with many of the musicians from this group, Tugma. And this tradition, they actually lived with Benny Sakong in the mountains and had a workshop and all that. And you could see this in the performance here, that these are actually students from Manila. Many of them rock, a number of them, or most of them, rock or jazz musicians, trained and are also very good musicologists. I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of my friend Vern for having produced these bunch of guys, this bunch of cool guys. And so apparently this notion of them knowing the tradition was very important in the performance of the whole of Daloy. So in 2014, I adapted the bamboo Daloy into a metal Daloy, and apparently saw it even more effective than the bamboo Daloy. So I used metal gongs, etc., etc. If you look at the rehearsal here, you can see them trying out the suklit. Actually, the rehearsal was not really about rhythmic exercise, but hearing the suklit. We were there in the middle of the space to hear the suklit. Is it coming out? Is it coming out? That was the most important thing for us, especially with Daloy. So being that and having this resultant melody that goes da 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 da, and transforming that into many different levels, many different layers, I have this second Daloy composed for those who can play in the tradition of the Kalinga. that was the thing. And so I don't think ensemble research or ensemble modern would be able to would even bother doing this. But apparently it was not composed for them. It was composed for these people who can do the Kalinga, so that we can tell our stories. We can just tell the stories of our forests. I guess that ends the presentation. I think we can show a video of the performance of Dalui 2, JD, with the full sound. The
Sure.
video was made by, the video recording was made by JD, who I invited in the Manila Composers Lab anniversary in 2019, and he was there. He was able to record a lot of, all of the performances. So we can play that now, JD, and
Okay, let me make sure I've got the right one.
yeah, the performance. There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, JD. Thank you very much, Ansai and PGVIM. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonas. That was really wonderful. I really enjoyed this very engaged presentation. I find your political engagement quite fascinating, as is your social awareness, the involvement of repressed minorities, the Kalinga, the symbolism, sonic symbolism you employ, the dissolution of those patterns, and understanding what it means for you is very revealing. I especially liked your comment regarding your studies in Freiburg, saying, I will know what I don't want to be. It will make me understand what I don't want to be. And that's another response to this concept of borrowing traditional ideas, in a way, studying a tradition so that you can decide not to use it. Anyway, I'm sure we'll have many more questions later on if we find the time within those 3 hours.
Yes.
So I'll swiftly pass the microphone to Dr. Ho Shung-Shi, who's our next guest today. Ho Shung-Shi studied at King's College in London and completed his PhD in composition at the University of Buffalo, where he also studied computer music at the Ledjaren Hiller Computer Music Studios. Hello, Shung-Shi. I'm very pleased to see you on the screen here. Since 1996, he's been studying the Gujin with Master Ji Jigun. He has an international presence as a composer with regular commissions from Asia, Europe, and America. He is also a sound artist who works in interdisciplinary collaborations with M. Lum, an international artist collective. He describes his practice as an exploration of a double intersection, one between the avant-garde and the experimental, and the other between the international contemporary and traditional Chinese cultures. Today, Shung-Shi will share his piano works, Reef, Weave, and Rub-Dub, examining the definitions of tradition and transition within a creative process that references traditional Chinese practices, both visually and sonically. Thank you very much, Shung-Shi. Welcome. The stage is yours. Oh, right. And I forgot to put your background while I was presenting you. But here you are.
All right. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. Let me just get into this sharing. If I can trouble JD to share the slides from your end.
Sure, we can do this. Let me get there. Okay. Here we go.
So I guess this little short presentation, I kind of titled it Composing Oneself, because I think that the idea for me about writing music in this place and time is really about trying to recreate oneself over and over again. So what Jonas and Alex shared earlier really resonate with me, both artistically and socially and politically as well. So, and I guess I also give the subtitles of traditions and transitions simply because of your conference, but they are, I think, very important ideas or concepts to consider what really are our traditions and what are the transitions. Okay, so if we can look at the next slide. Yeah, so I guess for me it's about refining meanings. I guess it's kind of punning on the words refining. So I'm not sure whether we'll ever get what we find or find what we want. But then I think that this whole process of refining along the way is basically what I think we do. All right, so the two traditions I must acknowledge really in my musical lives are, one is Gujin, which is this 7-string zither of the Chinese tradition. and the attendance literati culture, which is so much part of this instrument, that it's impossible to talk about this instrument without understanding the culture that really sustained it. Yeah. Then the other part, of course, is really very much the basis of my training, which is in Western classical music, which of course includes lead up to modernism and postmodernism. Yeah, so by modernism, I guess it's about this whole, for me at least, this whole break from the classical. So I guess it presupposes a deep knowledge of the classical in that sense, that one needs to know what would be considered classical for one to be able to break away from that. I guess that's also resonated with what JD was talking about, of course, referencing Jonas about knowing what we don't want from our tradition. And of course, the other modernism, the postmodernism, is equally fascinating in the sense of, at least it speaks to me in this sense that it's kind of an open, fluid mentality that holds a position of no position. So, or I guess what Derrida characterized as play, yeah. So hence this constant play of the entire field and even beyond. So, so I guess these three aspects kind of always find their way into my thinking when I am creating, yeah. And also I must say, when I'm listening to music. All right, okay, next slide, please. Okay, the next slide, you see just one aspect of what I glean from the Chinese tradition, the literati culture of the Chinese tradition. That is this whole idea of brush and ink, or in Chinese we call it mo. So what are the three aspects listed here about this tradition of brush and ink? One is this idea of having one model, but infinite possibilities. So in the Chinese practice of brush and ink or calligraphy, there is many different styles of script, of writing, maybe akin to fonts that we are more accustomed to these days. But even more simply, you find that very often Chinese calligraphy is not really about the words themselves, but about the writing. So each word can be written repeatedly in different styles of script by the same person, even in the same style of script, but very differently throughout his whole entire life. So, so it gives rise to a very creative process, although the model, which is a character, let's say, stays the same. When I say it stays the same, I mean that it looks the same. It should look roughly the same. But more importantly, actually, for a lot of people, I think that there is a misunderstanding about Chinese calligraphy. That is that it is the visual result is the what we get out of calligraphy. To me, it isn't. To me, calligraphy is about the process, not the product itself. In fact, when we look at calligraphy work, we actually see traces of time that has gone. And this time records this interaction between brush and ink and also the paper. And hence, in calligraphy, we often talk very much about this idea of mo, this interaction between these elements, which are, in a way, always unique in time and is hard to replicate. And so every practice in itself is a performance in that sense. Yeah, and the end result is a byproduct of this interaction, and it's merely a time record of what has gone before. So when we read a character, we don't recognize, the joy is not in recognizing the character as much, but more of enjoying the process that has been recorded visually. Okay, so that leads to my second point, that it is actually not what it seems. So if Chinese calligraphy is about the words themselves, then I would often joke with friends that we are a culture that celebrates bad handwriting, or handwriting that is ineligible, is illegible, that we cannot, it's hard to read. So it is clearly not about that. So it is not about the final visual result, but it's really about the process again. And those who study Chinese traditionally, you realize that to learn how to write a character, the sequence of strokes is actually very important. So it's not just that you can replicate the word in the way that it looks, but you got to replicate it following a very strict accepted order of sequence of strokes. So of course, in the end, they may all look the same no matter which stroke you start with, but traditionally it's important to honor the process of writing. And therefore, it leads to the last point here, which is that the result actually is illusory. Yeah, it's not really what it seems. And the aspect of interdependency is very, very strong. That means that there's all these uncertain elements at work. When we get two or more elements coming together, there's often interaction, and therefore it can lead to many possibilities, and hence it can be very uncertain in terms of its results. And these are the kind of things that fascinates me about music making, actually. So so in a way, my music has been trying to create conditions and situations where I can get this kind of results and these kind of effects on for the performers, this kind of experience of the effects, and also for the listeners as well. Okay, let's look at the next slide, where I will talk about this piece called Rub Dub. So Rub Dub is actually a piece of music for two pianos. I was asked to write a piece, and for that I can't really say I can write for piano, so because it's always a very difficult instrument for me to write for, simply because there's so much music for piano that's so very good out there already, and knowing the literature so well really does not help. So in this case, I decided to rethink what the piano can be, and what two performers seated across from one another in the usual piano duo kind of setup could be, in terms of those kind of interactive relationship I talked about, in the sense of trying to create a sound that is perhaps not predictable. So let's talk about the sound that's not predictable. So one aspect of that, right, is this is that only two types of sounds that are employed here. One is a cluster, an octave clusters basically, and the other is actually this tremolo of stacked fifth. So as you know, tremolo is kind of like free, right? I mean, it's unless you write a measured kind of tremolo, but tremolo as a performance action is relatively ever-changing in some ways. So if you combine the clusters, an octave clusters, which you might or might not be able to cover entirely, and on top of that, imposing on that is this whole tremolo of stacked fifth, you get two very unstable systems, I guess, at work here. And if that's multiplied by two, with two pianists, you get even more unpredictability, and that's what. And I immediately was drawn to that possibility. Yeah. So in terms of sound, you can see that I always think in that aspect of how to create something that is the outcome will never be the same or predictable. So in a way, I'm one that is not for something that can be replicated accurately, but more for an environment in which there is a lot of freedom for interaction. Then the other aspect, of course, to organize this potentially chaotic system, I am relying on rhythmic cycle. I think you find rhythmic cycle everywhere in every Asian culture. Yeah. So at that time when I wrote this piece, actually I was traveling between Korea and Germany. So you can see that two poles of thinking. And in Korea, I was very, very moved by that whole performances or music making with rhythmic cycles, in the sense of how does one count and what does counting means when one performs. Yeah. And how does counting with the whole body, not just the intellectual kind of activity, really actually informs the breath, informs the dynamics between the coordination of the two players, and also informs the kind of sound and emphasis. And so much can come out of just counting together that there's really no need to therefore specify expression marking, so to speak. I guess that there is some things that is beyond words here, that I think two players, when they start to count and breathe and move in the same way, something magical or musical emerges, and therefore there's really nothing else that a composer should say anymore to them. Yeah. So I guess that's similar to what Jonas was saying about that. I cannot remember the word now. That very beautiful word about this kind of rapport that is being, or this kind of magic that's being created when one plays together. So for the organization of this piece, actually, if you see this first page, you see a whole lot of numbers out there. Actually, those who understand Chinese music, this actually comes from a very ubiquitous ba ban or 8-beat rhythmic cycle in Chinese music. So yeah. So it is simply just my way of organizing things. And very quickly, if you listen to the work, and I think that JD has kindly posted the work on the website, on the conference website. And so because the work is 18 minutes long, so we will not be able to hear very much all of it at all, or any part of it, because it takes time to develop. You find that it starts off with lots of silences, like here in the first page, and then slowly the 8 beats start to review themselves, and then later on, I guess it also leads to a dissolution. But the dissolution is actually, for me, not the end in itself, but I think that dissolution brings or kind of transcends its material of the beat cycle into something else. I think much closer to what Alex was talking about in his piece, this whole cloud of resonance. Actually, I also give instruction for this piece for the pianist to have their pedal down, I think, throughout the whole piece. Yeah, so by the end of the piece, you can imagine how much resonance had built up over time. Yeah, so another aspect, of course, is that this actually came out from audience members' responses after the performance, that there's this optical sonic illusions that is going on, because as two pianists face each other, and they are actually doing parallel motion. So if one pianist play on the left end of the piano, the other pianist will be playing on the right end of the piano. So they actually move like that, mirroring each other throughout the whole piece across the keyboard. But as you know, that the piano, when they're facing each other, what is the low part of the piano is the high part of the piano for the other pianists, and so on. And so therefore there's this illusion going on as to like what is it that we are hearing and what is it that we see kind of like contradict each other. And also as you start to mirror each other, you find that actually you can produce the same resultant sound, but individually for each part in this stereo effect, they are actually playing very different materials, yeah, or at least in terms of register, they're very different. Yeah. So if we can go to the next slide, let's just watch a little bit of the beginning, and also if we can
play the video if you want me to.
Okay, can we just look at the next slide first, so they get a visual of what the setup is like, and then we can play the video, because there's also this background numbers that I think would be nice to show.
Is this the next slide?
No, there's still a next slide. Oh, wait. No, sorry, the previous one. sorry. Previous,
right?
previous, no, previous. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. Next, previous to this. Yes, correct. So this backdrop series of number, I think even with the German phone card, it's a screenshot that I sent my pianist friend that I finally got the work nailed down. It's a series of numbers, and these actually are the octave numbers. So actually, I kind of think of the piano as a 7-key piece like that, rather than 88 keys. Yeah. So okay. Let's watch a little bit of the piece, and then we can kind of like needle drop through the various parts to the end. So you kind of get.
Okay. You can guide me. Okay. I'll play the piece now.
So you can see here that they're really, yeah, the beat. Shall we fast forward randomly to somewhere in the middle, perhaps? Very much, JD. I'd just like to acknowledge the piano duo. They are the Bertram and Lynette's piano duo, this young piano duo in Singapore. Very great performance. And Bertram himself is such a creative composer in his own right as well. All right. Let's move on very quickly to the next piece, which is Weave. So this piece itself comes with a video as well. And if you can turn on to the next slide, it's actually again, in a way, I really like Alex's idea of dealing with something very simple. So here is also a very simple idea of a model that is then being repeated by me setting up lots of different obstacles along the way to upset this model. So this very basic model, I think anyone can sit down on a piano, can immediately sight read and play it through very easily. And you can see that both right hand and left hand are just like repetition of one another. Yeah. All right. Good. All right. So can we look at the next slide? Yeah, you notice that this idea of also one model and many possibilities can also be found in design of Chinese gardens, which I love. Simply because if you have been to any of these Chinese gardens in, let's say, Suzhou, for example, you find that after touring one, you have no idea whether you have seen everything. And when you enter, you have no idea which route to take because there can be so many different possibilities. And so the slides here shows, I think I found some analysis of garden design on the website, and somebody posted this showing the many different possible pathways. But not just that, I mean, this is a bird's eye view, but how they design the possibilities also include something very sensorial. So in terms of the way they pave the ground, in the way they plant the plants, to hide certain view, to reveal certain views, the way that they contour the terrain so that it becomes easier or difficult for a path. So all these ideas really interest me in musical sense. And so if you look at the next slide, you see how the original model, can quickly kind of expand into something a lot more difficult as my way of trying to create different physical sensations of trying to play a model. So if we look at the next one as well, thanks for enlarging it. Yep. And the next one. So the following few slides are simply just examples of how I kind of created layers and layers of the same model and superimpose upon one another. And then at the same time, then it creates this difficulty for the performers, therefore leading to a distortion of the model. And I think this kind of, to me, is similar to how in calligraphy, sometimes instead of, the brush has different stiffness to it, depending on the blend of the hair that you use for the brush. So depending on how much they want to challenge themselves, they might use a very soft brush, which is harder to control, for a fast flowing script. And then that might kind of create a very different sensation, and the resulting words might look very different. And so that's the kind of play that I try to introduce into my music in that sense. Yeah, let's run through the rest of the slides. I think that's it I have for now. And the last slide is just some concluding remarks. Yep. So therefore, music for me is a really interactive process between people. That's really the kind of conditions or situations I can set up for performance to be in. And in the performance and through the performance in those situations, what the listener gets is really the results of that. How much do I control how it comes out? I usually try to create situations where it becomes uncontrollable. Then also it is an interactive process of the various media. That is, I often think in psychological terms, psychosomatic terms, also how it looks like on the page, the print, how notation speaks or not speak to a performer. So that can kind of trigger the performance in various mental and physical ways. And so body, and also sound, but also the visual part of it. Like for example, in this video that I worked with a video artist, in making to try to bring out this whole idea that's a visual parallel to the sound in that sense. I mean the re, for example, but the rub-dub being a very classically set up performance, yeah, that is, the whole movement is all written into the music itself. So therefore, in a way, I'm kind of like maybe following the tradition of this whole music's role, the Chinese music's role is actually to harmonize the elements of our surroundings. So that I think that I'm trying to follow that tradition. Yeah, that how do we create music that is really harmonizing in that sense, which whatever elements, whether we like them or not. Yeah, and I also recognize after all these years of playing with traditions is that I find that traditions themselves have inbuilt drivers for transitions and growth. So traditions are not fixed. If they are fixed, then I don't think that they can be tradition at all, because I think that they have been passed down in a lively manner because they have within them elements that are very, very interactive, alive, unpredictable, that can lead to many different possibilities. And so I guess that composition in a way is for me to constantly compose oneself, not just individual, but as a culture for the place and for this time. So with that, I conclude. Thank you for listening. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chungchi. That was really wonderful. A very unique response to the brief. I really like how you explain your philosophies regarding transferring this those gestural approaches that come from calligraphy, giving the priority to the process rather than the result, focusing on the interactions between the players, creating situations where such interactions become possible. Also, the favoring of unpredictability is quite unique. I really also liked how you referred to your experience in South Korea, canting with the body, with the entire body, not just intellectually. All those values are quite unique. So I look forward to asking you more questions, and I'm sure you will be asked more questions later on. I'm aware that my time limit wasn't quite respected, which I should have predicted, inviting such talkative, wonderful guests as I did. So let's move swiftly to Dr. Chong Ki-yong, who's a very good friend and is one of Malaysia's leading contemporary music composers, whose unique music stems from a rich palette of sounds based in experimentation with multiple traditions. His works are infused with his own Chinese and multicultural Malaysian heritage. He has won many awards and has ongoing commissions. He's a very prolific composer. But he's also the creative director of Studio C, the artistic director of the 2009 Kuala Lumpur Contemporary Music Festival, and since 2013, he's been running the festival Soundbridge, which is a very wonderful event which promotes the expansion of creative expressions in the region, as well as interdisciplinary exchanges between all sorts of practitioners. Today, Ki-yong will talk about some of his music, where he incorporates various Asian musical practices, such as Chinese dialect folk songs, gamelan music from Southeast Asia, of course, Indian ritual and ceremonial music, ancient Chinese court music, chanting of classical Chinese poetry, Korean pansori music, as well as the Japanese gagaku music to create his own compositional techniques and language. And I'm very pleased to see you on the screen, Dr. Ki-yong.
Thank you.
The stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. I was so touched by the previous three master of composer who share the feeling of what the music they are in their mind, and also practice in their art. So for me, thank you for Jetty to invite me to join this panel discussion, and
Welcome.
and also this will be great to share some musical view with our colleagues, especially they are so experienced in their field. And so I will start with my slide, and I share the. So I'm going to share this my talk with everyone. So can you?
Yep.
Hold on.
It's there.
I'm afraid maybe I don't know. I share the sound or not. Hold on. I will stop the sharing and then I see one more time. So I have to share the sound before. Okay. Yes. So
And just so that you know, I also have all your videos ready to play here if it's easier.
Okay, it's good. So actually, in the early days when I was in Belgium, so I studied in Belgium, I already start to think about the special tuning system in most of the folklogs in culture. I mean, for example, in Asia or other country, they have a certain kind of interval. It's so interesting to think about. It's a fifth. So I mean, fifth maybe perfect fifth in the sense of the instrument was tuned according to fifth, but not into the well-tempered tuning. So in that 2000, in the years of 2000, I started to write a piece, try to explore this kind of tuning system. So the two instruments I pick is a viola and harp. So it creates certain kind of the linear and then vertical the connection between this idea. So the tuning itself actually, as you see, the instrument is tuned in itself is a small fifth. So it's a very small fifth itself. But and also the harp tuning is the major second in kind of difference. So that means, but when these two instruments group together, it's become a pure fifth. So in this sense, that means when you are running horizontally, the instrument itself playing some kind of out of tune. But when they play together, they create certain kind of consonant. So this is the early ideas of why I'm looking into my sound world of when I grew up with all these traditional instruments. They always tune in fifth with D and La, and so you can hear re, La, all sort of interval actually is with fifth. So that time in 2000, I tried to explore this work with a fifth interval. And then in the horizontally, it become the second, it become a big second and small second. So when in this, you can easily find in many in gamelan music, you see the second actually is not well-tempered tune in the semitone, and so or the one tone. So this kind of uneven of the tuning happen within this instrument itself, not but when these two instruments come together, it's become very consonant. So this is a small video. I mean, 1 minute of this for everyone, so you can hear. I hope it's fine. Okay, so this work actually is take me wait for 7 years to able to heard it live in New York when I was it composed. This work was in Belgium, but in 2007 I met a very good violist Stephanie Griffin, and she decided to world premiere this work. And because of the challenging itself, because of the scottatura actually, as everyone know, when you have the scottatura, that means the musician have to play different fingering, and also the intonation is so different from the tradition's way of playing the skill. So all this actually create quite a lot of difficulty and obstacle to the musician to take the challenge. But as a composer, I think we should have first imagination, and also the creativity actually is not because you're looking for something easy to play or something like Alex say, music very difficult. That's mean sound contemporary music is like that, but actually it's not. For me, actually, it's some sort of challenge between yourself and also others, creative person like musician. So for me, that's is kind of challenge for myself as a composer artist to look for a right musician throughout my composition career. And this is also another key issue to train myself and also build a strong relationship with my musician who I root for. So that is why when I was in Europe, I go through this journey. I quite lonely, and then go through all this lonely, like maybe 10 years or 15 years. But when I back to Asia, I found that this kind of environment is not very easy here to find such person. But we have a more community way of playing music, and then we are sharing music between a group of people. So, and also we follow our master, and then our master also teaching the student as a more like a family. So in this work, Xunfeng, I want to talk about is works my first piece for 4 Chinese instrument and Chinese orchestra. Actually, the intention to use the guzheng tuning. So actually, the orchestra have a 2 guzheng in the orchestra, and the solist guzheng, the tuning is in different way to make this kind of quarter tone different. So everything is similar, but you have the quarter tone different with the tuning system. And this tuning system, I refer to something like the teacher and the student. So the student follow the master, or one phrase by another phrase. So you're learning phrase by like an oral tradition. So the way of writing is mainly like echo. So like this people are playing, and also in different scottatura and guzheng have different, but they are playing like echo. Same the guzheng groups. So they are more like imitating the master singing. But the way of singing can be very different. The instrument can change from pipa to guzheng, or guzheng itself with the group. So the writing is a quite in the sense of using follow the leader voice, and then you copy the voice, and then you play back the same melody. And also for other instrument, I trick it quite similarly. When you have a group of writing, and then but we are hearing in the other sections, this group of the same texture is changing by itself. So someone will keep the same, and the other musician will do on like maybe ornaments and maybe doing something. I think about this is more like your master allow you to do the ornaments according to the traditions. So that is a kind of living ornament. So that means you are working on certain fixed melody, but after in certain moment, you are allowed to do ornamentations on the same melody. I will play a short video clips for this work, Xunfeng. Okay, lead to the my work for today. I want to talk about is the piece called "Sound of Slow Tears." It's the instrument I composed for guzheng, and then 4 bowing guzhengs accompanied with these 4 instruments. But the same principle, they are tuned in quarter tone different. So that means it's the same idea in gamelan. I talk about the beating system, like female and male figure, like mother and son, or you can say it's man and woman. So these 2 figure in the tuning system is obviously is my own imagination to do this kind of differences. But I found that also in Chinese, when you do the hand symbol, 2 piece of symbol, you will tune one in A and the other one in G sharp. Somehow, like they are not the same A. So then when you hit, you have the kind of beating on itself, and then you create different kind of taste. So this taste, for me in Indonesia, you call it rasa, and that is a very unique word. Also in Chinese, we call yun. Yun also is charming. So that means when you play a guzheng, for example, all this sliding is create this charming side. So it's not the sound itself, but it is after the sound when you slide on the string, and then slide to which point they have very precise of notation on that. So that means you have moved where it actually is notated, but there are no sound. So that is quite a lot of similarity in the music making in the tradition. So we not only produce sound, but you also produce certain kind of audible thing. So maybe the taste or maybe the kind of the gesture in the music making. So in this work, although I using the Indonesian slendro, and also finally will become a pelog skill in guzheng itself. So the player have to play 2 guzheng, but these 2 guzheng will tune in different set of 5-tone slendro, and then but finally when they meet together, it's become a pelog. I will show. I will show this pelog thing. So, for example, this is you have 2 skill. One A and B is create to get when they meet together, they will become a 6-tone skill, and then the C and D, they are going to be the same, but then A plus B plus C plus D, they become a pelog. So this is the idea in behind of these compositions of mine. So I will show more detail on the piece itself. I think this is the works of making this itself is a pelog, but in here, this four guzheng, actually the main note is the mi and re and re and do. So in this second, they are doing the string of bowing on only this drone. So this drone is more like an ambience, like the resonance of gong. So it's always accompany this solis. And but they all this material is all come from these two set of tuning, and this four guzheng, bowing guzheng is off state. It can be surround the solis, and it's more like a aura of this instrument come out with the effects, and then it's go on and go on. Finally, for me, the score you don't have to play quite exact because this is more like a listening experience. I notate everything quite clearly and quite precise, but finally I ask my player try to listen to each other after familiar with the effects and the notation, so they can quite easily to do some improvisation on that. I will play this short video, 4 minutes for everyone. Okay, in this work, actually, it's a kind of one-man gamelan, actually. Try to, not like Alex doing the 60 people gamelan in the sense of many people was joining into making this sound work. But I need one player to do this within itself and then make it happen. So the scoring is quite complicated. So I need a very good musician able to execute like two different tuning in these two instruments, but also create certain kind of mixing of these two skill on slendro and pelog. So you will create a certain kind of environment within the player itself, and then this is very important for me to bring out the sense of the musicianship. And as a composer, we can't sit on the platform to play for the audience, but I think the musician is another our also is our some sort of duplicate ourselves to play for the audience. So I need a musician who know exactly what I want to try to achieve, and then so the musician can get into the work behind. So then he or she can really bring out the essence of the music itself. So this is quite a challenging way of writing, because we can't easily find those musicians easily. So you have to make a lot of searching, like searching for certain kind of flavor. So like my journey, I travel around the world. I looking the different how say, the food is important, and also when the food travel around the world, so is the taste changing or is my taste changing? So all this is like the musical taste is very important elements when I compose. So the rasa or charming side of the music making is actually is quite all about to looking for the right taste and right color and right sense of charming. So for me, in my composition, I think it's so easy. I'm practitionist. I try my best to write, and also looking for other inspiration from all the master like you guys. So it's really amazing heritage we have in Southeast Asia. So we can do before the pandemic, we can travel easily to meet our friends, and also living with them for certain period of time. So that is quite a amazing journey for me throughout my music career. But I also try to bring out another aspect for our young generations. So my duty is not only as a composer, I also want to bring this message to our young generations. If they can find something from the different culture, different traditions, is a come of very important key issue, especially when the young generation is want to be a composer. When you are studying in composition in any school, I think it's not easy to look for certain kind of unique voice. For me, is in the conservatory mostly teaching you the techniques or some sort of writing technique, but not the passions of music making. So for me, I want to share a small video clips with you guys, and it's two of my students working on gamelan study, and they are composer, and they never think about another culture beside the Chinese culture. So I will share this short, hold on, this one. Yes. Sorry. Okay, in this video, most of them are come from China and different conservatory, and also some of them is musicologists, some of them are instrumentists, and one of the composer even composed a piece called Kotekan before she learned the real Kotekan. So that means they are all learning all this tradition from YouTube or some sort of video or capture from the resource. I mean, all these resources is come from not real, mostly like documented, but they are never play a kotekan in their life. But some of them compose a piece called kotekan for percussions ensemble. So for this, I understand very well. So you can pick up the technique from the books. You can buy a lot of gamelans, music theory books, and then you start to compose. And this is not the real passion of music making. It's you just look for some sort of document and then you try to imitate. But now after this study, so she totally understand the kotekan she wrote is wrong. But she did make a piece called kotekan. So all this actually is when you are a bit distant from the culture, you only can say, I love this culture, but I never understand it, but I just love it, okay? But I think the physically, to touch this culture, you have to be there. So before pandemic, it's so luckily we can do it, but now we have to all go visual, like now our panel discussion have to be long distance from Philippines throughout Indonesia, go Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, right? But I can't see JD in Bangkok. You know, I have to go there to hit him to say, hi, man, how are you doing? Are you still awake? So that is the dream I dream about when come back to Southeast Asia. But now is getting difficult. But just this talk I want to share is not only ourselves purchasing our music dream, but also in the same time, we share this heritage with other young generation is very important. So I hope we can do the field trip after this pandemic, so we can meet up everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyong. That is a wonderful, wonderful insight into your really unique world. You talked about discovering taste and cooking, and I think what you are cooking is really, really special. I have to confess, I'm a big fan of your sound worlds. I was fascinated to see that you waited 7 years to hear those sounds you created in the first piece in Brussels, and
it's a lonely journey. Huh? It's everyone. It's a lonely word for composer, no?
Well, you know, it's probably even lonelier now with the lockdown and everything. But you also mentioned what you require from your musicians is so specialized. So this idea of building a relationship with musicians who can actually understand your language and respond to those very high demands you have for them. Your scores are so wonderful. I've never seen such detailed scores from anyone, I have to say, in recent years anyway. Good. So I think since it's already 11, I'll pass the microphone to a wonderful lady. Anotai, are you here? I think you are.
Yes, I am.
So our next guest, well, it's hard for me to mention you as a guest because you are the really. I have to mention Anotai is the mastermind behind this entire symposium. But I'll introduce you nevertheless. Anotai Nitibon is a composer, a pianist, and a multifaceted artist who completed a bachelor degree at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok, and then carried on his studies in Edinburgh, Scotland, where we actually met many moons ago, where she completed a master's and PhD under the supervision of Professor Nigel Osborne. Anotai's research explores ideas connected to intercultural dialogues, integrating musical languages, as well as promoting exchanges between the professionally trained musicians, the folk oral traditions, and combining together many types of performers, a real community awareness involving children or even people with no musical background at all. Multiple compositions have been performed internationally by orchestras and chamber groups. And last year, Anutai was awarded the most prestigious award for artists in Thailand, the Silpaton Artist Award. She's also a very active educator, and you will be able to witness many of the outcome of her pedagogies in this symposium itself. But today, Anutai is here to discuss one of her recent piece or experiment entitled The Pose, where she attempts to restore well-needed interactions between musicians to promote meaningful communication between a violinist, pianist, and cellist. So Anutai, the moment has come. I understand your slides have been freshly cooked, right?
Yes, indeed, yes. And thank you very much, Dr. Sean David. And this is a really wonderful chance. Thank you for the invitation, for allowing me to be together with these masters. I have to say, like, it was just to reunion a little bit. I think we did some similar thing like this with Jonas, with Kiyong and Shungshi back in 2011 in Bandung, where our boss Mafia, Professor Dieter Mark, created the composition competition hosted by Goethe Institute in Bandung, and that was 2011. Some mornings that we are here presenting our composition, so it's exactly a decade, and we are here today this morning, and I'm still learning a lot from all of you guys. So thank you all the master for this morning, and so I'm just I'm just getting right into it. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, hang on a second.
And I'm trying to unpin myself, but I can't find a way.
Yes.
The Zoom lexicon is quite obscure. Okay, thank you.
So I can, okay. So we double work as a host and the presenter. So wait for me for a second. Okay. So there. I hope you can see that. So when we mentioned about the traditions in transition, so thank you, JD, a good friend of mine since 2001. So it's 20 years that I've known you, and thank you for being such a wonderful partner in creating all the symposium for the last 7 years. So when we set up with the themes, traditions in transition, so my first reaction was thinking of like traditions in terms of music and in terms of musical culture or culture. But yesterday, thanks to Kiyon, who has been part of the wonderful ensemble keynotes yesterday, and he presented us with the pictures of his grandmother cooking and singing together with his daughter. So in that case, it was kind of like start thinking, so maybe tradition is not just about music, it's not just about things that outside of us, but I can also travel into our own memory as well. So I'm gonna embarrass myself a little bit and show you this picture. So this is me when I was young. So that was kind of like my traditions. I used to go around the house collecting objects and things and make noise with it. And I grew up in a constant weekend visit at the jazz club. And I always hear all this jazz music, but at the same time, learning classical piano. So when I grew up, so that was kind of like traditions of finding sounds, making sounds. And the things that I was attracted to piano was not because of the sounds or the repertoire, but because of how I was curious to know how pianos work. And the first thing that I did when the pianos arrived at my house is to dissect it, take everything apart when I was like 7 or 8 years old. So it's quite dangerous. So please do not attempt that. And then when I got into university, and then I got into this kind of like formal educations, learning about composing. Not actually, my degree is in education, but I was given a wonderful opportunity from all of my teachers to compose and work with orchestra. And I also learned orchestration through all of my friends in the orchestra who tells me this can be done, this cannot be done. So thanks to them. And then from those point onwards, so when I arrived in Edinburgh in 2001, so again, JD, here you can see Dr. Sean David, Ajahn Ananda Kong, Professor Nigel Osborne, and many friends there. So this is something that Nigel, Professor Osborne, has kind of like created, put us in something which is called intercultural ensemble. Basically, it's the place that we actually learn how to different people's music. We learned to improvise together. We did concert in a very strange place, as you remember, a concert in Forest Cafe together with JD, and combining so many different things. But anyhow, even with all those exposed, so now I would say that instead of just one traditions, maybe I'm being exposed to traditions with plurals at the end. And so to this point, I would like to say that I'm proud to be people of many different traditions. However, because of doing an academic writing and everything, this is still quite curious. Like I can see still a lot of people are still suffering. Should I say suffering or not? I mean, I'm not sure, but I think it's a useful process to go through writing. I was trying to write a piece, so that was kind of like my PhD piece. It's a piece for chamber orchestra with Thai reciter, and you can see my attempt to try to put the Thai writing not in Thai alphabets, but in all these phonetic alphabets. So it's really difficult to read. Everything is so complex, and I remember at the end that Nigel said to me that possibly like when you arrive in Thailand, is not, maybe wait a little bit and then see. I was really keen to get the piece performed, and he said like maybe first if you try to get it performed, the audience might not sort of like understand it, and the musicians who even hate you more, kind of thing like that. So that sort of idea is that was like in 2007. So is that a challenge that we try to get people to play music, and what's wrong with the communication system we're using? So those kind of like pose the big questions in my mind. I mean, of course, Nigel was meant it in a very good way, and he's one of the person who really explore all these musical as well. But so he's also the one that sort of like introduced me to the idea of music in the community. So during the time that I was in Edinburgh, I had a chance because there's one subject we have to sort of like take, which is called music in community, and I decided to take an angklung with me from Thailand. So thanks to Anand and Janae, they actually have it sent to me to Edinburgh. So with this angklung, if you hadn't know about this, is actually the instrument that one person can only make two sounds. In Indonesia, it's originally from Indonesia. You can make one sound per person. But once it arrived in Thailand, we are a bit multitasking. So we are doing two notes, each in one hand. So you're really limited to the ideas that you have to know the whole, but able to act only on certain notes. And from there, I start, and like after 5 or 6 years, it start to break down because bamboo and Scotland is not really friendly to each other. So we decide to explore IKEA for different types of things, for bowls and everything. And then later on, because we have to travel, and often I have to travel on bicycles, and it will be really strange to carry all these bowls together with me to the workshop place. Therefore, I start to develop the use of other instruments, but using exactly the same philosophy as angklung. And then later on, so the last picture on the right hand bottom. So when I arrived back in Thailand, I think I sort of like discover how to work with angklung in a different way, comparing to when I leave Thailand a few years before. So when I arrived back in Thailand, I was asked to write a piece for a string quartet. That posed a very strange experience for me, because I think at that time, even though like the performers did it perfectly, they really did it so well, but I have a feeling that at the time of working on the piece, there are a lot of, and it's not enough faith in the music. It's not enough communication, and they just kind of like there because the notation is there and they're following the notation. And then I felt the lack of communication between the person who notes it down and the person who's making the sound. So after that, I sort of like maybe reconsidering like the way of making or notating or capturing music. And I was really lucky enough to be asked to be in this project, which is work with the archaeologists. And she was trying to protect these lands, want to make people understand this area of a 3,000 years old archaeology site. And she asked artists to go up there and then maybe try to tell the story in different ways. And here, so we went there with Ajahn Anand, and you can see that we're collecting sound, collecting stories, going out into places. And this is one of the very important experience that I had, that we, together with a tour guide, and I went up there with Anand, and then we start to improvise on the bamboo hut. And the tourist guide, these two persons, they got very curious and wanted to play as well. So at the end, we asked them to also play together with us and make a recording, and she asked to listen back to it. So at that point, I started to feel that maybe the role of music making is no longer bound to musicians, but we should all be able to express our music in any way we like. And then stem from that, you can see that the way I work is also, instead of using a fixed instrumentation, I always go and find anything that is available in that area and then start composing it together. And thanks for all my students who has been part of this. You can see, just very quickly there. So there are lots of improvisations that's happened, and you can see that how we start to imitate the movement of people. So the music become the connection between us and the people in the area. And later on, this become sort of like my practice in going to different places together with my students, and then find ways to use whatever available in those areas. So when I got back to composing music again, this was written for the Thailand International Composition Festival, hosted by a very famous composer, Narong Gangsaran. And here, so at that year, I think I did collaborate with you, JD, and another two, viola player Michael Hall, and another person, a jazz pianist. And I think that was sort of like an agreement. I would say it's an agreement between the four of us of how we wanted to do the piece. So I mean, departing from that thing. And then later on, I venture onto different things. So instead of composing notes, I start composing pictures, people, artwork, sounds, stories. And then even as a kind of sound installations, exhibitions, events within sound installations, exhibitions. And some of you were here together with me that year with Studio Music Fabrique. And then later on, when I have to kind of like work with the ideas of traditions again. So this is one of the projects that I was asked to work on as a research funding. We have to go and visit this place, Wat Po, the place with all this, where the Thai massage, sort of like the knowledge was collected there. And I was asked to sort of like write a piece that will make people understand the importance of this. And then, so I mean, we've been working with this together with JD at the beginning. We try to work with dancers, trying to imitate these patterns of dance and everything. But then later on, I found that maybe it's not just kind of adopting those dance into your body, but can we go a bit further? So what I did is that actually I get musicians and dancers to participate in the morning exercise they always do at that temple. And then taking from those experiences and put into the piece of music, but they telling the stories about their realizations about their own body. So the next video I'm just about to play is the video that will show you the realizations between the persons who's realizing their own body, and make this as a score for musicians to react. So that's some of the examples of, I'm just getting to another slide, hang on. So from that project, then oops. So from that project, I start to change the way how I work with musicians. So instead just kind of like writing them scores, but I start to, you can see from the video that when people move, this facial expressions, and it's actually the human experience that connected them, not the scores. So since then, I've been working with different musicians and always turn up at home at someone's house, taking a video camera, taking their own performance, taking their stories, and use as a part of the score. So this has been sort of like my practice for a while, and then I later on start kind of like working with my students, writing pieces, making installations of kind of like observing behaviors of the audience, and then design the performance according to the behavior of the audience. So those are the things that I sort of like got around me, and then I later on kind of like find a reconciliation point between music that I do and community work that I'm really kind of treasures. So these are some of the projects in PGIM that not only kind of like involve musicians, but we also involve people who are with non-musical background. So in this case, when you have to work with people with non-musical background, there's a lot of discussions you have to do. There's a lot of process of spending times together, writing story, using any language that you can really kind of communicate with people. So when I arrive back at writing scores again, and I'm going to get to this part now. This performance, this piece was commissioned by Ajahn Jamon Supapon, and it was also co-performed by Ajahn Siripong Tipchan and Ajahn Apishai Liemtong. So these are really a prominent figure in music making in Thailand. They are all soloists, and they are really, really wonderful teachers and mentors for a lot of young generations of musicians in Thailand. So basically what I have here, also as a recording engineer, he's also the very famous and one and only guy who kind of like make a recording of classical music in Thailand. So they are really the best people there. And so what I need to do when I was asked by Ajahn Chamon Supapon to write this piece as part of his funding research by National Research Council of Thailand. So it got me think a lot, and amidst of other things that we were doing at the Institute, I decided to create a piece which is called Pause. And these four movements of the pieces, I show you very briefly here. So it was kind of like summarized the past years of my works in some way. The first thing that I like to show you here is that maybe it's the same player with the first piece that I show you when I arrived in 2008. And so it's really simple tuning. And I really know that these three guys are knowing each other already quite well. And I just need them to, we only have 1.5 hours or 2 hours recording sessions with video. I just need them to kind of like be relaxed and be able to make the best of them. So it's almost like the piano is doing testing of the sound just to find the right angle of making sounds. And the violin and cello is just kind of tuning into the things, and they just need to try to be, try to pay attention to the pianist as much as possible. So this is kind of just there to listen to each other. And then the second part, the idea is very simple. It's a game for the two-string player to be in time with each other, while the pianist is gradually start reaching out of his piano. So this is the whole thing. The sonic sphere is the result of these attempts, and the score is just there to instruct them of the action or the experience they should kind of try. And then the third one, even though the piano is kind of like doing a lot of pluck string pressing and all this kind of, so it's more games, more activities for the pianist. Why the two-string player, now they have to learn to take turns to be a soloist in some way. So even the soloist as one note, they have just to make it nice and being able to pass it on to another person nicely. And the fourth part the piano is doing almost like making a normal repertoire, but the violin and the cello is now just kind of testing different possibilities of the piece, of what they can do with their own instrument, with single notes, single stroke. So actually, the piece itself, the score is very simple, and you can almost replace it with any pitches, any other instruments. But the main point is just to be able to encourage players to interact with each other. So then now I'm gonna show you the video, and that will be the end of my talk. Okay, so very briefly, JD, could you unspotlight me? And then I can show the screen again. Thank you.
Really?
Nope.
Are you
Yeah.
spotlit?
Yes, somehow, yes. And I'm
Okay.
gonna show the last video that is done by the Janjamon Superphone. Thank you. Okay, so just 1 second.
But it looks like I am in the spotlight. Oh no, that's fine. Okay, good. Thank you.
are going to create a sound environment, and therefore everybody will have to participate somehow or other.
So that's to quickly finish with the piece. And thank you for Ajahn Chawan for that commissions. And also thank you, JD, for this. So I just believe in different aspects of traditions. I'm sure there are many aspects of traditions, but the aspect that I really, really want to emphasize now, at least this part of my life, is the people within the traditions and how to get them to spend time together and communicate through music. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aotai. This was such a wonderful summary of your really unique journey. And this piece is wonderful. Sorry for playing a bit of sound in the background. We were doing a bit of backstage communication and I clicked on the wrong things. But listening to you talk, my conclusion is that you have become your own tradition, I think. I think that's a fair conclusion. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Of course, some of this presentation took a little bit longer than we planned, as usual. But I'd like to invite all of our guests back in the room now and open the floor for discussion. I don't know if any of you want to jump in and share reflections about each other's ideas, comments.
A quick request. Do you mind changing the background to have two anotypes? A bit too much.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Okay, it's very pretty. It's very pretty. No problem.
You will have noticed I got all the backgrounds wrong all the way through. So I introduced all the wrong people. Okay.
The first time I know you, I introduced you to make noise in my sound. So that's completely acceptable. Thank you.
Well,
Beautiful.
Yeah, can I just say a little comment to start off whatever discussion we have? I don't think we have much time. We have like 20 minutes or something. But what is remarkable actually is to see how this engagement we have with tradition and modernity, both of them existing in our worlds today. Southeast Asians, we have a Southeast Asian brand of modernity where tradition plays somehow a both as a combination and as a disjuncture to whatever is modern, our modern infrastructures, our modern highways. But we have modern highways. We see pagodas around. Oh, no, I'm sorry, or whatever. We see. I was talking about KL, which I love so much, the city. So you have the twin cities, the twin towers there, and then you see mosque, and then it's like somehow and of Thailand also you see temples. Somehow modernity is sort of to look for a better word, interrupted, and I think it reflects so much in how we do our music. In 2009 we had this very wonderful where we first met, all of us, I think, except Kiyoung, I met a year before, in Kuala Lumpur, which actually is about the city, which apparently paved the way to the mafia of the Southeast Asian composers, so to say, and because we share that kind of reality, so that's all, and I have confirmed that such in how we have grown since 2009, 2011, 10 years ago, and we look older, but our dynamism is still there. I'm very happy to be here with my mafia brothers and sisters. Anyway, thanks JD for this.
I think you all look younger.
Thank you very much. Yeah, right.
Maybe it's the Zoom filters. I really like your concept of traditions as interrupting modernity. I think that's a beautiful.
Or the other way around. I mean, but I would look at it as tradition interrupting modernity in the sense of the Southeast Asian worldview, the Weltanschauung, so to say this. And I think I've been so happy to be engaged with all these wonderful composers because I could see myself also in that thing, and I see, yeah.
Can I say something? Because I think Jonas give me a strong sense of enlightenment in certain humans' condition, because when he brought the musical idea from those minority and disappear culture, so I think that is why we're talking about tradition in our regions, even in the whole world. All this tradition is going to die from certain kind of condition, but like also Chong Su say, the tradition have its own power to the on driver to go through to become a growing to certain kind of tradition. So it's not a dying tradition, but we also see there are a lot of possibility, like the languages. When you don't speak Hakka at home, you lost the tradition. You don't have the taste of this food. For example, if your daughters or your son not going to speak your mother tongue, that means there's many things cannot pass to the next generation. So we have to adapt another son, or calling more community to join this mission to still keep this tradition going on. So in the past, we are trying to using the family value. So you pass through the tradition through family. So I think our music family is quite big in Southeast Asia. The community, like what we say, the mafia, the Southeast Asian mafia idea, actually is come from the community of family. I still remember 2011 when Arnold Thai bought all this pink color boy to the Bandung. I think they are the family group. So they are now in your music performance. They also composer musicians, I still can feel this tradition is going on because we lead the way. Also from the quite early days, we gather together and then spread this the wisdom to them. And also thanks to Arnold Time, they brought them to Bandung and then in different kind of events. And also Jonas and those mission of building up the Manila Composer Labs.
Yes, yes.
To build as a family group to conduct your own work when you cannot present.
I think what is beautiful about our young composers, like Manila Composers Lab from my end and Soundbridge from your end, and also Anothais and Chungchi, it's actually also becoming a small mafia. I mean, in a way, I mean, we are. I'm using the word mafia just to emphasize that connection, but we're not really. We're not, but it's also becoming a community in a way, so that we have such a community in Southeast, in the region, and we have a continuing search. It doesn't end. The continuing search to create a contemporary music that we can call our own, that speaks of our everyday lives and the lives of those who are coming after us. I think we're on the right track, and I'm very happy about how things have been. And even despite the pandemic, we have been communicating. We have this and all that. I think we should continue. How's Singapore, Chungshi? How's Singapore?
Good. We just came out of a quasi lockdown, so now I'm in public. So at least, yeah, but visitation is still limited. So,
Alex, where are you now? In Indonesia or in US? Oh,
Down. So I
lockdown.
just stay home. I don't go out.
Where are you now? In
Jogja.
Oh, you in Jogja? I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to follow Hee-Yong's remarks about working with younger generations, I think one of the things that I treasure in my own working when I work with the Pink Gang, who's some of them are here today, so thank you. They are big professors now, so
pink t-shirt.
You give me a very bad impression of me and the Pink Gang. Anyhow, but what I like the most is that I'm not ashamed of making mistakes in front of my students, and I think there's something about tradition that is not just about the perfect side of things, but when you learn the process of learning, and sometimes you make a failed experiment and you share those experiences with your students and learn also from their achievement. And I think this is what I really like when working with young generation. It's not about making the right thing for them, but it's actually sometimes stumble and then find a way out together. That's just to share that aspect. And tell them not to repeat my mistakes, something like that.
I think for us as what we call ourselves is a senior mafia, but we have our own.
I'm the oldest with all of you, you know.
Okay, but I think we portray our own musical dream in a very unique way. But in the same time, we also treasure our young generation come very close to us to try to understand us, and also pass to this kind of community love, because this is quite important in this small circle to get everyone united to share musical culture and tradition. So I thank to everyone. Alex Deer also share his knowledge with my students when I come to Jogja, and then he's really spending a lot of time to talk to them. I'm really great. I have so many colleagues like you guys. And JD also, every time I come to Southbridge, he's the one non-stop working until the midnight. And then everything is last minute for him, but everything is magic. So I think very thanks to JD, and everyone have a great
I think last minute is definitely part of the tradition. Last minute is one thing that we all have in common. But what is really wonderful in your presentations is how each one of you found very unique ways of developing very fresh practices out of the multiple things you borrow. And I'm really glad you are acknowledging the importance of education and passing on this spirit of exploration to the next generation. And I think this will be, of course, very much illustrated through the presentation this afternoon, where we will look at the works of AYE. Maybe, Anotai, you could plug this a little bit on, I give you a cue there.
Okay, sure. So just quickly about the AYE. So this is kind of chance to work with young composers and performers in with the musical instruments from the local area. And we have a lot of wonderful students by Dr. Jonas, a lot of wonderful students by Dr. Kiyong, Dr. Ho Shung-shi, and also Alex as well. So it's the second generation, but meeting together, and I'm just there as a facilitator to make it happen for them to meet. So you will discover more about the Arts and Youth Ensemble this afternoon. And then let's hear what kind of, you'll hear the piece also this evening, the new creations of how they kind of find ways to create different types of notations. We will hear two very prominent persons for this session, which is Professor Dieter Mark from Lübeck, who's really famous of making a kind of like the guy also who brought us together following Kiyong first Goethe Institute composition competition back in 2009 in Malaysia. So that's the first time we all met. And then Dieter carry on, and then also Peter Will, the conductor of Studio Music Fabrik, who's been so patient in communicating with all the musicians in the region, knowing a notation or not, and combining all this together. So so stay tuned for this afternoon. But just one thing that I'd like to direct my appreciations to Dr. Ho Shung-shi. When you mentioned about the Chinese garden, I remember that we had coffee together in Bandung in one of the galleries, and you mentioned about
you didn't take us, huh?
you were
I was there. I was there.
you were there.
I was asleep.
You were there as well. So, and I remember Dr. Shung-shi mentioned about this, the Chinese garden. And that's the first time I heard about this, and then start to see things in a completely different light. So actually my work until now, or when I work with installation, putting people in different places, making music, I'm still following that curiosity that stems from you. So in some way, even though I'm not really much into the traditions of Chinese garden, which I really want to learn more, but due to different limitations, I won't be able to experience it the way you did. So what do you think about these kind of traditions? The transition of tradition is moving completely from its own roots.
Yes, and I'd like to just add a little, just 1 minute to add a little, because I have this work called Patangis Buhaya. I think most of you heard this in 2009, which has been performed many times in many different contexts. And the last performances in 2019 were in 2 gardens in evenings with cicadas and all that. JD was in the first one, which was performed in the UP at the garden there. This beautiful garden which we built with the Jose Macedo Hall there. And there were frogs joining in the performance. The other one was in Descanso Garden in California. I don't know if Alex knows this place. It's somewhere in Pasadena. And there was this group of California-based artists who performed it. And again, there were the cicadas. I was distributing these little flutes and stones to the audience, and they were all joining in. So it's like the community of people and the community of the environment. I think it is a statement. I'm just so politicized. It's a statement of space, a statement of flora and fauna of Southeast Asia in that sense. And to me, it's also political in the sense because the mountains in the Philippines are being encroached by these gigantic mining and logging firms who are taking over who are crossing over the ancestral domain of indigenous peoples, and that is another statement. So I have been performing Patangis Buhaya in many contexts, telling those narratives. Yeah, just that.
And to go back to, well, to stay with the idea of gardens, Shung-shi mentioned that the beauty of Chinese gardens is you have no idea what route to take and no idea if you've seen everything. Hence the importance of the bird eye view map. And if we connect this to the theme of this talk today, cultivating new artistic directions, I think each one of you in their own unique ways have been instrumental in inspiring the next generations to create new designs, to explore new ideas. Where do you see all of this going? The cultures of Southeast Asia are so rich, and we are really seeing a real blossoming of all sorts of sounds and approaches, very eclectic practices. Where, if I ask you, each one of you, or whoever wants to answer this question, where do you imagine this garden going in the future?
I'll be the last.
Hello?
Ooh,
Alex,
yes,
Alex,
Can
go.
you hear me?
Yes.
yes,
Okay.
sure.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
I want to talk
You
about
froze,
the past.
Alex. You froze. Okay.
Yeah, I want to talk to the past. And so I just want to give you a little history. In 1966, in America, when I was first studying to composition, and I was very interested in new things like what I mentioned. Now to hear what you've all done, and also living in Southeast Asia, and to know again the freedom and the variety, it makes me very happy, because when I started, the whole idea was that anything new was very limited, and anything you did that was different was a rebellion. So now when we look at all the things that we saw today in Southeast Asian composition, I don't sell rebellion, maybe a little bit, but not much. For instance, I'm very pleased that the sound image, the sonorities remind me a lot of things done by the pioneers like John Cage and Feldman. You know, there's a lot of that going on, because I hear a lot of vertical sound and not so much concentration on motif and thematic, vertical, logical kind of things. So I just want to say we are very lucky to live in Southeast Asia and have the benefit of new things, new ideas, and the freedom for this to be accepted in this community. For me, it's very funny, because in America, I looked all over. I found Indian, I found Javanese, and finally I moved to Southeast Asia, and that's where I belong here. See, not in the American space. So that's answering JD a little bit where we're going with the future, is that we are already moving into the future. We're in the future. And it's wonderful that the young composers will be doing things that in 40 years ago, we had to fight in a certain sense to have this kind of sound.
Thank you, Alex. That's a really interesting way of responding to this, looking into what came before and what everyone's been bringing to the table. Anyone else wants to comment on this idea of projection?
Can I just those points, because I have to take my leave pretty soon. I need to rush to another event, 1 hour's time, so I need to grab lunch.
Jump in for your last words.
As usual, Chungshi.
Yeah.
Always leaving.
It comes together today for some reason. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to say that honestly, I have no idea. I mean, I think that this having no idea is a good thing, so that it is we are continually surprised by what may come, and just like Anatai said, that there is a really strong young generation coming up, and I'm very, very happy for that, because there's so much more people doing, and I kind of disagree, Alex, that there's no longer a fight. I think that we are constantly fighting. And also internally as well. I think, I mean, don't take the polish of our presentations at face value, I must say. I think that it's all very illusory. I mean, that whatever nuggets of I wouldn't call them wisdom, maybe information or summary that we can give, or at least I speak for myself, they are results of long time struggle or continuous struggle. And I must say that anything I say today or ever will never be the last word, and I enjoy that. I think that we should keep discovering just like the Chinese gardens. I mean, okay, to return the compliment before I leave, to return the compliment to Anutai about this garden idea, the piece wrapped up with that whole tremolo and clusters actually came from the piece that Anutai wrote for the Composer Society's 10th anniversary concert, where her action required for the pianist was to clean
The piano.
and then looking at the score and all that, and then also listening to the sound. I mean, when I first saw the score, I thought, this is not going to be very interesting. But when I heard the performance, of course, we had a very good performance, Morris.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually sonically a lot more exciting, and I love the fact that you have something simple and yet it's unpredictably mysterious, so to speak. All right, so yes, thank you a lot for inviting me, and I'm so happy to see everybody and to know that everybody is well and kicking. So please do stay safe, and we meet again soon. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Thank you very much,
so much.
for joining us and sharing such wonderful ideas
you.
today. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to
Jonas, you
say,
mentioned. Oh, Keong, Keong.
May
Keong first, Keong.
may I do
Okay, everybody at the same time, please.
Hang on. May I say very quick things?
Yes.
I think I proposed that we can do a director's cut. So what we can do is that we can conclude this session very quickly, and then we can go on discussing. We will open this room for another half an hour.
Okay, that's a great idea.
Okay, so then let me do a quick things just now. So I'm just kind of letting people know what things are happening in the afternoon, and then we should continue. So if you can go and grab your lunch now, and then come back with us in the second.
Oh, thank you for the tom yum. Thank you for the tom yum.
I really miss that. So for the afternoon sessions, this is what will happen. So you will see there will be a presentation from some of PGIM young blood who has been exploring their own ways with music and other art forms. So please stay tuned with contextual studies, and this is going to be hosted by Dr. Abhishai Chantanaka Jonfung, who is a big fan of Dr. Alex here. So, and he will be performing your piece also on Friday. So you please stay with him and then hear some of his presentation together with the student from PGIM. And then later on, you will hear in parallel room sessions, we will again speak about the AYE, and the AYE is this ASEAN Youth Ensemble, and these are some of the performance that we had. We will have a discussion this afternoon, and also have a musical reflections of what happened this evening at 7 o'clock GMT 7+ Bangkok time. And we'll be joined together with Professor Dieter Mark and also Peter Will, and the 5 representatives of AYE, Harold from the Philippines, Shisang Lee from Malaysia, Tontrakoon Gao Yong from Thailand, Septian, and also Jocelyn from Singapore. So do stay with us in the afternoon, go grab your lunch or coffee, and then just see you later in the afternoon. So, and if you decided to still stay with us for the discussion, I think it's really wonderful chance to be all together here. So you can also welcome to stay and possibly make your voice heard as well. We can promote you as a panelist. It would be nice to actually have everyone as a panelist. So just raise your hand and we can do that.
Was going to say something, I think.
Go ahead.
Keong, I think was.
Yeah, I saw quite a lot of messages in the chat, and I think beside our own South Asia Mafia, that also we have a lot of colleagues come from Europe, like Max, Christoph. They all come here to live here and then work with us, and then also they help us a lot in all the possibility during their time. And also the young generation was also go overseas to study, and then were willing to come back. That is one key. If they are willing to come back, that is what we have to do in the future, because this platform have to continue with all the efforts from those young generation and also musicians. I still remember one very young girl, and she came to me to say, Keong, I was when I was 15 years old, come to the South Beach 2003. Now I'm joining your festival in 2019. That is a big gap between the understanding contemporary music during the 15 years old girl, and then until today she become a composer. So I think this is a kind of history we make throughout the years. So we still continue, like the symposium, Anotai, you are running, and also it's really good platform for us to sharing all the information and also the visions of our mission. So that is what I hope, and all the young generations can be embrace the diversity and also highlight your own artistic skill. That means you have to study, continue study, and then go anyway, and then come back to Southeast Asia. That's it.
Yep.
Mm.
To me, the question of where, let's go back to the question of JD. Where are we going? And that's actually a scary question. Because to me, the question has not been actually where are we going? Because if you ask where are we going, it's like we are being taken only by a tide, and we just allow ourselves to be swept. And of course, the tide is or many things. The domination of Western culture, which actually continues today. The global political economy, wherein countries in Southeast Asia, like the Philippines, of course, not Singapore, not Malaysia, not Thailand, even Thailand, but of course the Philippines is merely a provider of cheap labor and cheap raw materials. So we remain feudal and remain all that. And so it has so much impact on the way we live and the education of the, so it's still a question of not really where we are going, but what we can do to make ourselves go where we have to go, where we want to go. A society that is, maybe I'm utopic, but a society that is ideal. I do not want to take this as rebellion because it was never as rebellion, but it was only a quest for justice. Rebellion is a romantic notion actually, and it's like Beethoven fighting the world and all that stuff. The world is more than that, and but still it is a fight. I must agree with Chungshi. Still it is a fight, but it's a fight to get people to know what is happening to us. Not only the musicians, not only in terms of music, but in terms of our place in this gigantic, multifaceted global world. And for people to come over to us, to stay with us and say, I want to be you, I want to be like you. That should be taken also, well, as a celebratory thing. Okay, thank you, but also with a little bit of anxiety, because we plot out where we want to be. We plot out. I'm so excited about how PGVIM grew. From the first time I saw PGVIM was in 2013, I think. And I remember I needed stones for my piece, and
Yes.
I think you got from your house, and
Yes.
part of your house fell down because no, I was joking, but we
It
got
is.
stones from your house, and the hall where we performed, I remember this Kiyong, it was even very new, it smelled so new, and now you see PGVIM as a very, very important, significant, in many ways, a true, an honest, true institution that has education in the broadest sense I could see. And in fact, a lot of us in our university also envy somehow how you have grown. I'm so happy, and
That's the first time I met
these
you,
are the
Jonas.
things that these are the things that actually remind us of where we are. Conferences like these. Yeah.
I remember when the first time I met you, Jonas, in front of this very flashy, prestigious hall in our institute. Jonas, you were collecting stones.
Yeah. That's for
Yeah,
my
you were
piece.
looking on the floor, looking for
And we had to
stones.
get it from Anothai's
This was already
house.
conceptually very interesting. This was definitely a tradition in
So
transition.
the joke was that Anothai was newly married at that time, and was it Kia or somebody told me, oh, her husband's gonna get mad at you because you took stones from her house. I was like, oh my god, I'm so sorry. I think it was Dieter or somebody told me that. And said, I'm so sorry I had to get stones from your house.
My husband still called you the stone man until
Oh,
today. So he's
Stone
the
Age.
man who needs stones. So remember, but I think it's really because of the people that PGM has been lucky to know. So you guys has been contributing a lot to what we are doing in PGM. So, and also all the audience who's most of them are being part of making the PGIS, especially the symposiums, stand for the last 8 years. And this might kind of like lead to my answers to your question, JD. If I can recall to tell you one of the memories I had when I attend the Royal Mont workshops with Brian Ferneyhound. I remember there was one time that he introduced the festival director, the organizer, kind of the manager or something, and he said that this gentleman is a very good composer, but he decided to take this role to enable things to happen. And I was kind of like, yeah, there's actually two sides of composition's career, the one in front and the one behind. And we always sort of like pay a lot of attention to the man in front, but there are lots of things that can only happen because someone decided to step back and let other people kind of be in the front. So this is what I hope the next generation can also bear in mind, that there's always different roles you can take in making things happen. So that's the first thing. And of course, Jonas has been leaving a big enough space for his students to be able to stand in the front and take the role direction.
Juro Kim is there, yeah. And
yeah,
Teresa,
something like this. And Kiyong as well. I still remember the dinner you had with all the pink gangs, like, and that you give them directions of a kind of like, so, and a lot of them are actually doing that now. So they like Super Pawns here. He's been also putting a student as his first priority. So that is something that I'd like to also leave for the second generation, that there are few different perspectives, and you learn a lot actually by stepping back a little bit. And then the second point, which I think that my last point, it will conclude itself quite nicely. I learned it from a very good friend, Seung Kim from Seoul National University. I remember that he was there in Darmstadt, and he's also very big professors in Seoul, but he was driving my students up and down the hill, going to the performance. And then he said, like, he told me a very important lesson. He said, when you reach 50, only tools you need is your wallet. And you just have to be there, give it and shut up, and let the rest of the young people do. So I'm gonna shut up from now and then leave the stage for you all. Thank you.
So this year I'm 50, so that means my wallet's going to...
You know, Key, I'm 60 this year, so I'm 10 years older than you.
No, you have to have two wallets. But I think I very agree with Arnold Tai for a composer not only have the role as a composer, and also you have to be able to also sharing your knowledge and then put maybe in the back, let other people in front. So that means organize. So I think this is the organization is take a lot of time for your own private time, and you have to sacrifice some of your artistic time to compose. So that is all involved with all of us. I think most of us doing this with our own initiative time. So I hope also I'm great to visit the same time with Jonas to do every events around South Asia. I think this is quite a good memory to keep. Yeah. And I hope everyone under COVID situation all in healthy, yes, and good, everything in the good shape, and also your artwork. So for me, I'm very happy to join this time for the panel discussion. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
You know what this COVID has brought me personally is that for the past year, what I have been starting in 2019 already, I have continued again to try to be not myself, to compose music that is not me. And I'm talking about one of them on Thursday, and the dialectics of that. And I think this thing, of course, this is terrible really, but it also teaches us lots of things. Being isolated, and occasions like this actually are a very good intermezzo to to the rigors of everyday life, teaching in front of the computer and all that stuff. And yeah, we should party like this more often, actually.
I will bring out my wallet, I think.
I should have 2 wallets.
So Alex, you have to have the 3 wallet, right? Or you have the
No, because I already gave the 3 wallet. I have no money now.
yes,
So
you
we
are in
should make-
Jogja, right? You're in Jogja,
Yeah,
so you have to pay a lot.
But we should
in
make
Jogja,
a
yes,
new
correct,
rule.
correct.
We should make another rule. When you get to a certain age, everybody should bring the wallet here.
Okay.
65 maybe?
Anytime, as long as I get it.
I thought we were the same age, Alex.
Add another 10.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Anand.
Really? Wow, it's remarkable.
If I can
How-
introduce my teacher, Ajahn Anand Nakong, who has been the beginning point of joining us together. So
This party is growing.
Anand, where is your wallet?
Huh?
Oh, that
Where's
guy,
my
that
wallet?
guy doesn't need a
it's
wallet.
metaphorical,
He
guys.
has a checking
use that
account. He just signs his
electronic
checking
card
account.
thing.
Oh, you
Yeah.
have a credit card. Okay, that's very good.
Yeah.
Give us the
Hi, Alex.
give us the password.
It's
Still
so good to
very
see
beautiful
everyone.
Film.
How are you
yesterday.
doing, Anand? How are you doing?
Very good. Still very active with a lot of things, and I organize this evening talk with the readers of Chetana Nagvachara, the great philosopher writer.
Ah.
We critic his song, his music, his book. Yes, yeah. And tomorrow I coming with Makoto Nomura. The Japanese composer who actually I saw in this morning the film that Alex make the gamelan 60% playing. Yeah. So those
For that composition, I just met him maybe 1 week before.
all
because
right.
he was studying at EC in Jogja. And of course, me being very in a way narrow-minded, I only work with old Javanese people. So Michael Asmara said, "Oh, there's this Japanese composer. Maybe he'd like to join my Gangsaran." So he came to 1 or 2 rehearsals, and then he liked it very much. And so he brought in more Japanese people. So that's why we have so many.
So surprising to see many Japanese musicians in that Gangsaran piece. Yes.
Well, because a lot of them are studying Javanese classical dance and music.
Yeah, and they do Indonesia music and dance very serious back in the country.
Yes. They're very good.
Kumiko was studying there at the time, right? Kumiko, you must have met
Yeah,
Kumiko.
the ex-girlfriend of Alex. Yes, I remember.
I remember Michael Asmara is the president of the Japanese lady gamelan group, right?
Where is
Michael,
that guy?
yes.
Michael
Where's
Asmara.
Michael?
Asmoro told me that. He said, I'm the president of the society club. So there are many. They have one. I think I attend a concert of the Japanese musician, gamelan musician, right, Alex?
Yes.
Yes, they have one concert with the dancer. I remember that time Didi concert.
Oh yeah.
Didi Tatawak.
Yeah. So Ramli was there, and then they performed gamelan's piece before the Didik's dance. So there's quite a lot of Japanese gamelan musicians was.
Yeah,
in
they have
Jogja.
around 40 gamelan groups in Japan.
How about in
Incredible.
Thailand? How about Thailand? Do you have a gamelan?
We have a
practice?
set of gamelan musical instruments at the Indonesia embassy. Just a matter, how to enter, how to get over that front gate. The teacher there is very very good heart. He want to share his knowledge, but just the security never allow us to do anything. It's a shame. Hi,
How about
Ananta.
Philippines?
Hello.
Jonas, how
Oh.
about Philippines? Do you have a gamelan?
We have a gamelan at the university, and I think we have another one somewhere.
It's been a while, right?
It's
You've had a
fascinating.
gamelan
It's
for a very long time.
Yeah, but it's fascinating
Mhm.
how like for example, if you look at the idea of the gamelan itself, it has become a U.S. citizen. It has a green card. It's becoming a Japanese citizen. It's
Yeah, and
having this.
European
I mean, it's going everywhere. I mean,
community
it's
citizen as well.
nation states are actually superficial divisions already in that sense. Um, I can say the same also of the pipat. The pipat in UP we have a pipat set.
Oh,
Mhm.
Yeah, it was given to us some time ago. I don't remember. Maybe the
Yeah,
time
maybe
of
during the time when Manop was there.
yeah, Manok. Yeah, Manok
Mm.
was I think yeah, and we have that. Although we didn't have a teacher even before the lockdown. So, but we have the instruments
Mhm.
and we have Burmese harp. We have the
Oh yes, yes.
we have no teacher. I have a Burmese
Mm.
harp here also in the house. And
You're right.
So
It's a
just,
very important condition for being able to develop those all the sonorities is to have the instruments available, right? UP is very colorful in that way. I was really impressed by the amount of instruments you see.
I think that
everywhere.
roots from Maceda, who actually started this all in the 60s. With all these instruments in his room when we were students. Vern and I, we were college students. We'd sneak in his room and look at his scores and look at his instruments. We actually were doing this during our lunch when he's out of the office, and so we just sneak it. It's an inside job with the. Oh my God, is this going to be published? It's an inside job with his secretary, and okay, he's gone. And then so the two of us, being naughty boys, would hey look at this, hey look at this, and all that stuff. And
Yeah,
it all-
PGM is now starting collect all the Southeast Asia musical instrument. So far, they have complete Pipat and Mahori instrument next door to Anotai's office. Maybe next time you come, to the symposium, you can explore something made as a workshop.
yes, that would be really wonderful. Yeah.
You have a yellow
I'm
hand.
raising hands.
Yes.
I'm raising hands just to let you know that
What is
this
the
is the free improvisation sessions now. You have 5 minutes to update it with any new artistic direction in Southeast Asia. So it's a free improvisations. You have 5 minutes. So go ahead, everyone.
Yes, it's true. We probably need to go and have lunch before the next.
Okay. Yeah. So go ahead, update us with anything that is happening.
Yeah, I was.
I know
I was,
the man with the wallet. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was mentioning that on Thursday I will be talking in this conference on the notion of how a work becomes a work, and it has to do with my going back into this phase of composing, taking direct materials from tradition, and this is, but in a way problematizing that same thing. So on Thursday I'll be talking about something I am doing but I don't want to do, and this is something like that, and this is going to be I think at 10 o'clock in the morning. It's with the session of I forgot his name. What was his name, JD? Anyway, 10 o'clock here. So I'm inviting everybody to come in and join us in the discussion.
Jiradet.
And
Jiradet will be the
I've been
host for
working
your
on
session.
that.
Okay, yes.
Jiradet will be the host for your sessions.
Yeah, Jiradet. Yeah, Jiradet. I'm sorry,
Yes.
it's a 60-year-old man, not remembering names anymore.
I just want to congratulate JD to just now mistakenly put the Professor Raman Santos' voice in Anotai works. I thought it's intended and it's very beautiful. That is one of the beautiful part of the piece actually. So I said,
no, but seriously,
I couldn't hear it.
I could sleep to that.
I thought, why not have a little advert subliminally?
But only one small critics on JD, too long. Just you just put one sentence when Raman Santos finish and then cut.
One picture.
Yeah.
I totally apologize for this. I'm still figuring out how all this technology works, and anyway.
but it's a beautiful we call beautiful mistake, but it's wonderful because I hear this voice so familiarly and then also very touching.
I've heard it for 25 years.
Man, I think that's the
teacher.
voice I also you already live with him. I think this is the kind of fortune to live with a
No,
master like him.
I'd like to take the opportunity. I think JD should do this to invite you all on Thursday. Can you say this, JD?
Yeah,
Yes, of course. So Thursday evening, we will be premiering a film portrait, a documentary about Dr. Ramon Santos, one of the most prolific composers in Southeast Asia, who really illustrates many of the themes we've been discussing today. And the film will be showing at 7:30. And before this, we'll have a talk with Dr. Santos himself, as well as his students, including Jonas and Bernd.
Yeah, it's his family, actually. We call it family.
6 p.m. So please join us. I think it should be a wonderful moment. That's it. And I think we probably need to go and have lunch now, or even breakfast. Who knows? But I'm really delighted you responded to the invitation with so much care and so much attention to how you communicate those ideas with our audience. I'm sure it was a very productive time for everyone. I learned a lot, and I hope this is the first. Well, it's not the first. I think this is just one step along many more events where we can share our ideas in that way. So thank you very much. Stay safe. Please join us for the next events. I think this afternoon looks very promising.
Yep.
And I look forward to seeing you all. Thank you very much.
I will watch this afternoon. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so
Take
much.
care.
Bye.
Bye
Bye bye. Take care.
bye. Bye bye.
See you again later.
Yeah.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.